That's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Star Wars Expanded Universe. Now read by Disney or Lucasfilm, whichever way you slice it, Legends. Today I have for you the final book chronologically, not publication-wise, that James Luceno wrote for the Expanded Universe, being Star Wars Millennium Falcon. This takes place after Legacy of the Force and deals with Han and Leia and Alana grieving and coming to terms with the events of the last story, while also just giving us a fun adventure talking about the history of the Millennium Falcon prior to Lando and Han. And that is basically it. There's also a bit of a treasure hunting thing going on here, but it's just by all means a fun story. And this is again another means for dissenters or haters or whatever you want to call them. If Disney were to ever listen and we were to ever get more stories set in the Star Wars Legends timeline after Crucible, okay, regardless of you know, people's opinions left or right on this series or that series or this or that, you can tell good stories post Crucible regardless of what came before. And if anything, make what came before greater in hindsight. Though after Crucible, you're basically free game to kind of just move the story forward along without having to deal with any of the baggage at all. Like, you know, outside of Jason not being there. But it's just a really fun story. Honestly, I'm not doing this to be contrived. I'm not doing this to be a contrarian. I'm not doing this to piss people off. I am telling you that me personally, as an individual, I had more fun with Millennium Falcon than either of James Luceno's duologies in New Jedi Order, and even if not for the fact that it was the ending to New Jedi Order and the last 100 pages slap, but outside of that, I felt the pacing was extremely off. Maybe not extremely is a strong word. It was pretty off, though, in Unifying Force. It's only made up for the fact that it's the finale to the entire thing. But if I'm talking about the book as a whole throughout, I had more fun with this book than I did with Unifying Force. Just personally. What I realized for me is that James Luceno slaps in the prequel era. Because the prequel era was not the best. You know? I love it. I grew up with it. But it's not the best. And he really helped make that era shine. Cloak of Deception. Labyrinth of Evil, Rise of Darth Vader, or the Dark Lord, Rise of Darth Vader, you know, Plagueis, like, he made that era something worthwhile. He really made that era shine. And I think that's why I prefer those books over most of, I mean, here's the thing. I have to give James Luceno the utmost props because he was pretty much one of the core story members for all of New Jedi Order, even if he didn't write every single book in New Jedi Order, but I felt like his books in New Jedi Order were some of the weaker ones. And that's the thing. And then not to mention, no matter what people say, no matter what people try to argue, in Legacy of the Force, Dark Nest, Fate of Jedi, everything in between there, usually people in the thank section, they thank James Luceno because they asked him for notes and help and stuff, and he obliged. So regardless of his personal opinions on a certain thing, he was willing to work with it. Not to mention the fact that this story, Millennium Falcon, about the history of the Millennium Falcon can be told literally whenever. It wouldn't affect the story of New Jedi Order if Han knew this beforehand. It wouldn't affect the story if this happened before Young Jedi Knights. It really doesn't matter where you place this story, so long as it's placed somewhere after Han got the Falcon. Obviously, you can't tell it beforehand, because then how's Han going to learn about who else had the Falcon if he already had the Falcon? You know, but this story could have been placed anywhere. He could have placed it after Unifying Force, but before Dark Nest. He could have placed it before the start of New Jedi Order. He could have started it before Crystal Star. Anywhere. He could have had this story. except for like the original trilogy, because it's a bit busy. But even then, he probably could have made it work if he really wanted to. But he chose to have this story be set after Legacy of the Force. And not only does James Luceno do that, he manages to make some really heartfelt and emotional moments dealing with the trauma and aftermath of that. So ultimately, whether he agrees with that story or not, he used it to his benefit to tell something compelling. And that speaks wonders. But outside of all the Legacy of the Force stuff, and all that stuff, and Han and Leia grieving, and the multiple intimate, sincere moments we get between the two, and with Amelia, her code name, so that way no one knows, but Alana and her grief over it, even though she's still a child, she doesn't fully understand the things that she's feeling, but she's also going through it. She just lost her father, that she only recently learned was her father, and also feared her father. So all this stuff is going on in this little child's brain, you know? But on top of all that, you have this whole separate thing where we learn about this pilot of the Stellar Envoy, which is the Millennium Falcon, who existed during the time of Episode 3. In fact, I think there's even a shot, unless I might be mistaken about this, but there's a shot in Episode 3. This might be a deleted scene, or maybe I'm not remembering correctly, but I think I remember hearing somewhere. But this could be me just blatantly lying to you right now, so take this with the biggest grain of salt. But like the Millennium Falcon leaving or something during the Battle of Coruscant. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't think that is true. I'm probably just made up a whole bunch of BS. But regardless of what it actually shows in the movie, this book says, like, yeah, there was the Millennium Falcon, and it was trying to do stuff then. So we learn about this new character, his name being, I had notes, and then I didn't grab it, but his name is Jadik. And he is doing a mission for these Jedi, for the Republic. But he gets into an accident, and he wakes up 60 years later. So now he's trying to also rediscover the history of the Falcon. Well, he knows it as a Stellar Envoy, because he wants to get back to his ship, because there was supposed treasure aboard it. And this is also coinciding with Han, Leia, and Alana, because they have just gone through a lot of grief. You know, they're dealing with a lot of stuff, and they just want to have a fun little adventure. You know, not the end of the world or anything, but just a fun little adventure. So they go, try to just, it was something that Han always wanted to do, but he just never got around to doing it, so why not do it now? So he's doing it now with Amelia and everything, and Amelia, Alana, if they're in public, they call her Amelia, because she's supposed to be their daughter that they picked up. They adopted somebody after everything. That's their cover story. Because again, Tino Ka's, you know, children and or marital relationships or whatever has to be kept a secret. It's not the prequels, just because it's similar. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. But, yeah, so, you know, it all converges. They meet up. And there's also, of course, some bad guys that want the treasure too, and off and away and adventure we go. But it's such a fun story. Did I know I needed this? Not really. Like, this just kind of came out of nowhere. But at the same time, it's so much fun and interesting. And on top of being fun and entertaining, and, you know, and just a nice breather after so much darkness from New Jedi Order and Legacy of the Force. You know, to just have this fun little story. But on top of that, they do address these dark moments by having really good emotional moments with Han. You know, there's a moment, you know, I was going to do spoilers, but I'm not going to do heavy spoilers. You can kind of go in this book knowing practically nothing about it, and I think you'll have more fun that way. So I'm not going to do any spoilers today, but, you know, like, there's a scene where Han goes to meet up with Lando, because, of course, Lando had the Falcon before him, so it'd be good to ask him questions about who he got it from to kind of follow that trail. And there's a part where they're kind of just sitting, laughing, they're talking, and, you know, paraphrasing here, but Lando just goes, "You good?" And Han says, I'm fine. And, you know, they talk about it a little bit, you know, but without actually talking about it. And it's just handled really well. Or the multiple moments with Leia, you know, looking at her, seeing Jason through Alana, and not getting to her. Or there's a moment where Alana gets, she becomes a hostage for a second, and it instantly makes her think of Jason, and it scares her, but also makes her sad. So she's dealing with that. But she's very good at compartmentalizing her emotions, because that's what Tino Ka does a lot. And so she just kind of like buries that away. She's kind of like, nope, that's fine. Let's go to this petting zoo. Let's not think about that. Let's go do this instead. She's very good at doing that and not actually kind of processing and dealing with it, which is not healthy for a child. But there's just multiple moments throughout of that. And again, I have to give props to James Luceno or anyone. I really don't care about behind the scenes, because people use, like, Matthew Stover said this, or James Luceno said this, pick your favorite author. We're going to use his opinion to validate mine, therefore you are wrong. Instead of just like, okay, that's great that author thought that. That doesn't make you right inherently just because they agree with you. So behind the scenes doesn't really matter to me that much. What's presented in the stories that we have, and is it contradictory within that story, within the setting it actually exists in? Like, if we actually lived in the universe, would this be a contradiction or not? And that's really the thing. But, when I know the behind the scenes stuff, when I know that certain people didn't agree with certain decisions, to write a story, post that, and to use elements from it to make a stronger story out of it. Because this is, again, you could look at all these books as individuals, which is what I do when I'm reviewing them, right? But as a fan, the expanded universe, it's not just this book, it's not just New Jedi Order, it's not just Legacy of the Force, it's not just the Han Solo trilogy by Brian Daley. It is all of it encapsulated into the whole thing, because it's all connected. That's the thing that made us expanded universe fans fall in love with the expanded universe, was the connectivity of it all. The fact that it all mattered, that it all flowed into one. So, you've seen me be a bit more critical this year. As I did my rereads the second time, I mean, most of the stuff in the Dawn of the Jedi era, the prequel era, that was the first time for me. But all the stuff post, Return of the Jedi outside of Bounty Hunter Wars has been a reread for me. I've read all of this stuff. But I was a lot less critical of it the first time. I was just going through it, having an exciting time, reading stories set after Return of the Jedi that weren't the sequel trilogy. Because for me, that wasn't for me. But here we are, with so I'm being a bit more, sorry, I'm getting flat. So I've tried to be a bit more objective and critical of things, which is why my opinions of New Jedi Order have lowered, and my opinions of Legacy of the Force have lowered. I still love those series. But as an objective, stance, I've tried to look at it, and so intellectually they've had to lower for me. But don't mistake me, my heart is still 100% for the Expanded Universe. I love the Expanded Universe. I don't care how many bad stories I read in it. I love the Expanded Universe. I love that it all connects. I love that it all fits. So when James Luceno, who regardless of how he feels about certain stories, writes the story, not only makes a really fun adventure for all of us to enjoy, but also deals with the stuff that came before to enhance that whole storyline by dealing with the grief and dealing with that and adding to it and giving it more substance and more emotional beats. Because, again, he didn't have to set it here. By doing so, he makes the people who did read it have more emotional moments, have more stuff to maybe shed a tear over or to get choked up by. It doesn't matter how he feels about it. He made the effort, and that needs to be applauded, because that's what the Expanded Universe did. It didn't matter whether something was silly or a bad idea or an abortion or da-da-da-da-da. I hate Bounty Hunter Wars. I wish it would die in a fire. But you know what? Somebody probably enjoys it. In fact, I've heard some people say they enjoy it. And all the power to you. I would never ask for it to be retconned to not happen. I would never pull a, oh, Anakin didn't die in Star by Star. I would never do that. Because that's lazy. No, instead, whatever every author has given us, how can we make a compelling story despite everything moving forward? So this is basically just a big Expanded Universe praise more than a review, I guess, of why I love the Expanded Universe and, gosh, why I love James Luceno. But I do. I genuinely think this book is really good. It's not something I asked for or would have necessarily wanted, but I'm glad it exists. This is honestly some of the most fun I've had reading since even before New Jedi Order, to be honest. This is really fun. And deals with stuff from Legacy of the Force to make that hit even harder. So by all means, a great book to read before you get to Fate of the Jedi. In fact, it actually connects to it at the very end. It does a lot of world building here too. I forgot to mention setting up the world for what's about to happen in Fate of the Jedi and the state of the world with Dala and everything. It's not like a big part of the book, but there's some nice political stuff being mentioned in the background, which James Luceno is pretty good with anyway. So I loved that a lot. And yeah, it was just overall just so good. One of my favorites of James Luceno, actually, which might be a hot take, I don't know. But honestly enjoyed it more than all of the New Jedi Order stuff. Just peak fun. Han and Leia have a lot of fun moments, little funny moments, you know. And then the new characters like Posh, and Jadek were just like a load of fun. Like they were fun new, like I would read a book just about them. Like they were fun new characters to learn about. I mean, waking up 60 years later is a little weird, but it's fine. It works for what the story is, and you know, I like Cross Current and Riptide, but you don't really need that to enjoy Fate of the Jedi. Neither do you need this, but I feel like this in of itself is a sort of an epilogue to Legacy of the Force for Han and Leia and Alana. So, you know, I would recommend reading this before reading Fate of the Jedi. Plus, Fate of the Jedi, you know, it doesn't ever get as serious as New Jedi Order or Legacy of the Force, but it's still like this long-going series again. So this is just like a nice one-off, breather, fun adventure that you can enjoy with some emotional moments hidden there. So, you know, I mean, I would read Cross Current Riptide because I'm a completionist and I love the EU, and I do like those books, despite how weird they can get. But if you don't have all the money in the world and you just want to know, what do I read after Legacy of the Force? Before you jump into another 9-book series, read Millennium Falcon by James Luceno. And I think you'll have a splendid time doing so. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, sharing episode a ton, and I will see you when we start our adventure with Aaron Olston's, I think, Outcast, Fate of the Jedi, Book 1. Until then, guys, may the Force be with you.